Hi, Meta. Welcome to Venture with Grace.
Hi, Grace. Thanks for having me.
To start off the show, I would love for the audience to learn more about you. So, you were a founder yourself at one point, and later on you joined. So I think you have your really long, amazing career at Redpoint Ventures. To start off the show, I would love for the audience to learn more about what are some core lessons in your founder era versus starting out your venture journey.
Yeah, that's a great question. So there's so many lessons and so many things I learned and did wrong, quite frankly, that I try and kind of pass on the knowledge so people don't
Mhm.
make the same mistakes I do. I think the biggest thing that I learned is hiring before I need, like 6 months to a year before feeling the wheels are falling off the bus, right? The best advice I ever got was if you are feeling that way, that means you are already too late to hire. Like you should have taken the time 6 months or a year in advance to spec out the role and hire the person so that you don't have that burning need. And it's really hard to find that time
Mhm.
when you're like early days of a startup doing everything and wearing multiple hats. But it's so important to um, just take a beat, let kind of that stuff build up on the back burner, even if it feels uncomfortable, to prioritize interviewing and hiring the right people to fire yourself from certain jobs over time and let those people take the reins.
Totally. I totally agree with you. I feel like hiring is such a like untalked about thing while all the other I guess every your employee or people on your team kind of define the success or the quality of your team at all times. So I wonder, so since you have worked in multiple different firms like Javelin, Rough Draft before you joining DeFi, it was like Redpoint Ventures. So what are some core lessons that you feel like it was consistent for you to thriving in the venture ecosystem?
Yeah, it's a great question. I well, we'll see what thriving means
Yeah.
down the road. Uh, but I think I'll just tell you kind of my
Mhm,
philosophy and partly why I got into venture is that I'm a connector by
mhm,
personality. Like I
mhm,
get so much joy and satisfaction and happiness from connecting to really awesome people together that could benefit from that connection. And I'm kind of like always thinking about, oh, Grace would love to meet this person, or she just mentioned that she's like working through this problem. And I know someone who has had a lot of, someone who's had a lot of experience with that would love to connect them and see how they could uh, kind of build that relationship and help each other out. And so I think that that is my general philosophy in life and in venture, which is put out good juju into the world and be helpful to people. And, some small part of that will make its way back to me hopefully one day. And if nothing else, I think I've hopefully made some people's lives professionally or personally a little bit better.
Amazing. I want to quickly say hi to the audience. Hi, Rob. So
Oh,
I
that. Hi, Rob.
I feel like so I want to start with instead of just straight on sourcing, I wanted to start with your newsletter because I feel like your newsletter have really kind of deep breakdown into every sector you looked at for either fintech, vertical SaaS and everything. So why don't we start with what is the content diet look like for you to create the newsletter? Because there's obviously you do a really well-rounded market map, and then there's hot takes, and then what is it, all that kind of stuff. So how do you kind of educate yourself in each different spaces, and what are the how do you kind of translate that into your own learning? Because I feel like I also talk to a lot of people, but I feel like it's harder to formulate them into major takeaways.
Hmm. Um, I've done it two different ways. I think
Mhm,
sometimes it's kind of the top-down thematic approach
mhm,
where, hey, I want to learn everything I can about the senior care market or
mhm,
um, whatever specific vertical I'm looking at in vertical SaaS, and then I'll try and meet every company in the
mhm,
space and or different people that are operating in and around the space to better
Mhm.
understand from potential customers and partners what their pain points are and where
Mhm.
opportunities lie. I'm doing that actually right now in the world of NIL, so name, image, likeness. The For college students now that they
Mhm.
can monetize, college athletes now that they can monetize. I've been talking to tens of tens and dozens of people to understand in around the space, to understand their point of view, what they're seeing in the market, to better understand where the opportunity lies. um, and so sometimes I'll do it in that top down way and then learn from really smart people who are deeper in the
Mhm.
space than I am, and try and collect, what are the similarities I'm hearing, what are the differences, why that is, and distill that for myself, honestly.
Mhm.
And then I want to share that back out with the community. It's kind of the same thing. Hey, I'm in this really lucky seat to be able to talk to so many amazing smart people. Like, let me share that back out, the distilled kind of lessons that I took away. And then sometimes it's bottoms up. Like, I'll follow kind of where my interests are pulling me, or where I'm seeing really interesting pockets of innovation. I don't think I went into looking at vertical SaaS as a category, thinking about it, oh, vertical SaaS is a category, because it's really just like a compilation of many different categories, right?
Mhm.
And so I just felt like I was being pulled towards some really interesting innovation in a bunch of really specific verticals. And I kind of, same thing, distilled similarities in what I was learning, and tried to zoom out and um, kind of uh, document those takeaways that I had for myself as well, in case it's helpful for other people.
Totally. I wonder when it comes to like, since you mentioned like you would chat with call it like 10 people in the industry, and like, do you have a checklist that you would look? So for example, in your um vertical SaaS article, you publish about like, market size is an important factor, customer concentration or fragmentation, product depth. Like, what are the questions that you would use to chat with who to get the answer for you? Because I think like if you chat with like 10 different people in one industry, like there will be like very diverse group of opinion among the people in the industry, versus like if you chat with one group of people, which is like, I don't know, founders in, I don't know, an L space or some other spaces that you're passionate about, like maybe the answer will be more like coherent. And I know that you also talk about this in like another podcast about you guys would have like chatted with like CFOs, or like, when you were like doing a lot of fintech investing, basically chatting with a potential customer and then build up like the insights and pipeline for, or like thesis for the space. Can you share a little bit more about like, what would the day-to-day like to kind of like help you absorb um important information effectively?
Yeah, I don't know that I have a rubric of the same questions I ask
Mhm.
every person. I think I just come at conversations with curiosity and trying to understand what's important to them. Maybe I could be more
Mhm.
efficient about the conversations, but I think I'm just curious to learn from them. Sometimes, if I come into it, if I'm going top down, so like for
Mhm.
NIL, the NIL space, for example, I'm asking people explicitly, like, hey,
Mhm.
what are you seeing in that ecosystem? Where do you feel like there's opportunities? Here's what I'm seeing. What do you think? Yes, no, because I'm kind of in the process of honing and iterating my thinking about a very specific space.
Mhm.
Uh, and I think I've learned a lot of really interesting things and gotten some interesting feedback from people that way. But I think when I'm kind of, it's a bottoms up distillation, like for vertical SaaS, I just approach the conversations from curiosity and trying to understand, you know, what is driving people, what are the dynamics in their business and in the market, what are they seeing, and as a result, what I've seen in terms of business impact and scale and success, and what are some takeaways that I can glean from those conversations. And I think that's like, I didn't ask anyone for, like, my personal point of view in vertical SaaS is start with the workflow,
Mhm.
then build in other things over time. No one said that to me specifically, that they had that point of view, or that they think that that's how they should build a business. I think just from kind of talking to users of different
Mhm.
vertical SaaS solutions and talking to founders and seeing how different companies have progressed. That's a conclusion that um, I've reached myself. It might not be right, but it's kind of my personal opinion today.
Totally. I wanna like dive into like one of your articles, like a little bit about vertical SaaS, since a lot of the listeners would be like SaaS founders, and I wonder like what is since like AI is very like we're still in like a AI trend or AI wave here. What are call it like three differences between like the current SaaS founders like who are leveraging AI versus the past? And since like you dive in deeper into like market size and customer concentration versus fragmentation and all the again product depth, can you kind of unpack that a little bit for the audience on like the key things that you feel like you gain from like chatting with many people in the vertical SaaS space?
Yeah, so I've been calling it vertical SaaS 2.0. I don't know if that's
Mhm.
fair, but um, uh, the I think a couple years ago, the story that investors wanted to hear and that founders were telling is, in my vertical, the market size
Mhm.
is probably relatively constrained, right? But the way
Mhm.
that I grow the company and the market over time is that I sell more products into my same customer. So I start with
Mhm.
a SaaS solution, but then I can sell a lot of financial services, payments, lending, insurance, whatever it is that makes sense for my vertical to sell through.
Mhm.
And that's how I can kind of grow both my ACV. So how much I'm charging per each customer, and therefore the market size, even if there's a very finite number of customers in my
Mhm.
market. I think that story is still kind of similar, but now with AI, the story is more about, and the innovation I'm seeing is, hey, the workflow that people were building before was only so compelling, but now with AI, we can make the product even more magical. And so the workflow and the value add and the opportunity, or the net difference that we're adding relative to the incumbent, is much greater just from the workflow perspective in categories that it wasn't really working before. Um, I will say that actually, in my opinion, and I wrote about this, I actually think the bigger opportunity, there's kind of some opportunity with AI and the amazing things that you can do, but I think the core workflow was still probably pretty valuable when you use technology to improve core workflows, even before LLMs. I think the really interesting opportunity is that distribution is getting easier. I think,
Mhm.
a big reason that many vertical SaaS companies were so hard to scale historically is that the cost of customer acquisition has been so high because they're relatively small businesses.
Mhm.
Like, they're not large enterprises, right? They're not publicly
Mhm.
traded companies for the most part. They're private, kind of smaller businesses. And so reaching them, it costs a lot of money and it's challenging. Reaching them, marketing to them, getting in front of them costs money. And then it's like, it's still a higher touch sale. Like, they're not self-serve signing up. You have to still interact with them, potentially
Mhm.
onboard them. And so to, um, there's real cost to getting them onboarded, signed up and onboarded onto your platform. But there's a ceiling on how much you can charge them because they're not really large enterprises. They're smaller companies by definition, and so the cost of acquisition was so high that it made kind of that, you know margin versus customer acquisition cost, so CAC to LTV, a challenging ratio. But now, with more interest to adopt new technology, because the end user is like so taken with the idea of AI, rightfully
Mhm.
so in many ways, right? Like, what can AI can, I don't know exactly what AI is, but I think it can like totally automate all the stuff that I hate to do and just make my life so much better. There's so much more openness to try new products, and so that acquisition cost is going way down. And legal is a great example. I kind of pointed to
Mhm.
this example, but lawyers generally are slower to adopt. They're very risk averse.
Mhm.
That's what makes them good at their jobs, and they're very happy to be the last one to adopt a new technology. Right, once everyone else has vetted it, made sure it's compliant and it works, and they'll very happily be the last one. But today, legal tech companies are getting in front of signing legal firms, in-house counsels, like with pretty quickly, with relative ease. And so a category that historically has been really challenging to penetrate has, at least from what I've seen personally, just really opened up. And so I think that's a big difference that AI has brought from a distribution perspective too.
Totally. I wanna double click on, like, for example, you use a legal, like AI as an example. So I feel like one thing is like there's traditional industry like legal, like real estate, like typically they're very resistant for like tech innovation in general. But like obviously as you mentioned, like right now with the new wave of like AI, people have to like be forced to like adopt into a certain changes. And I wonder like how does the industry will look like in the next 10 years? Because I've seen like there's a lot of different AI startups in the legal space. Basically, essentially, it's like a hybrid model where, like, for example, like a law firm would leveraging or like maybe a startup will leveraging a legal AI tool that maybe generate a contract using ChatGPT, but like, or like a GPT wrapper, and then like essentially like there will be a lawyer quickly reveal what's going on with the template. And I wonder, like, but like, since like a lot of the adaptation is more towards like adding human component on top of like the layer of AI, I wonder where would you see in the future of like 10 years or something in that space? And then since there are a lot of startups that are doing a similar thing, how do you like evaluate if a particular startup would be able to make it in the space?
Yeah. So you said a bunch of really interesting things there. So maybe I'll start from the beginning and work my way. So I I don't feel like people are being forced to we're like resistant to technology
Mhm,
or being forced to adopt it now with AI. I think maybe around the edges, but not the average potential customer. I
mhm,
think actually like as I'm guilty of this as a like someone who's in technology and a technologist. I'm like, wow, that person's workflow looks so inefficient. Like
mhm,
technology could completely transform and make their lives better. Like they must want this newfangled tool. And the
mhm,
reality is like oftentimes things are working just fine for those folks, right? And the reason that they don't want my newfangled tool is that it's like things aren't broken. And so why try and fix something that isn't broken? And so the I think tech in general as an industry, like we need to have a little more humility for people who we see as not using as much technology as we would want them to, and it's because things just work just fine for them, and so it might not be worth the additional cost and risk and pain of learning something new. But I think with AI, they a lot of people are now envisioning what life could be like. You know, they've kind of seen the headlines and the stories and are wondering how much better could AI make my life if LLMs could write
mhm,
like contracts for me or red line contracts for me or whatever it is. Like, wow, all these things could be so much easier. And so now they're excited and interested in seeing if
mhm.
that's actually the case. Um, the second part of your question was about the human in the loop. I think there's still a lot of opportunity for AI or technology in general to be really valuable without automating people away. There's a lot of stuff that's really manual, really cumbersome, really error prone because it's
Mhm,
so many repetitions or it's like there's so many steps required to get to an answer that technology can do better or that humans don't want to do anyway. And there's so many steps to getting anything done, right? That even if getting a specific task done, that even if LLMs or AI can do one or two or three of those tasks,
mhm,
even if a human still has to be involved at the beginning or at the end, there's still a lot of value there because it will make the human more efficient or allow them to do things that they like to spend time on versus things that they don't want to be doing but have to do today. And so, I think it's completely okay if there's I don't know that total 100% automation should or has to be the goal. I think even partial automation is really great, actually.
I wonder, so like I guess like I really agree with you. I feel like it's kind of like last mile is always kind of like done by human. And I wonder like um I want to like maybe ask another question about like the competitive side of things. I feel like there's a lot of competition in every vertical SaaS subsector. And like you mentioned about like market size, I feel like a lot of a company could start with like a really niche market and then like you mentioned, like maybe sell more product in that particular niche or like maybe expand it to like a multiple other like just expand like horizontally. And I wonder like what are can you like maybe like chat about maybe using one of your portfolio company or like any company that you have encountered as an example to talk about like how do you evaluate the market size and like from the like competitive landscape on like how you're evaluating one company versus another.
Yeah, it's hard. I don't know if I have the right answer for you, but um, I think for market size, I my general rule of thumb for a venture-backed startup is that I want the market to be over $1 billion, ideally a couple $1 billion, and it doesn't have to be just the core market that they're going after today, but whatever the company's vision is, right? Can I like dream the dream with them on what the end market will look like after they've launched many different products, and what is the size of that market,
Mhm.
right? That's kind of how I think about market size, and then doing the work to figure out, hey, what is actually the software spend or the whatever the products are that they're selling, not the, you know, legal is a really big market, but software spend versus human spend is different. And so, like, all the money that's spent on outsourced legal is not, at least today, maybe in the future, will be 100% addressable by a company selling technology. And so, trying to understand what that part of the market, the size is, and then do I believe that over time, that they can fully automate, and so that whole outsourced legal market is addressable. Maybe it is. Um, the and then to your question, so for example, an investment I made is in a company called SynthPop that's automating back office tasks for healthcare
Mhm.
organizations, and they're starting with durable medical equipment and processing documents for referrals to send out medical equipment. That is an example of the software that these companies spend on. It's not a huge market, but they are replacing human work. And so, in talking to customers and potential customers and understanding how they see the value of the technology and how much they're willing to spend, that gave me comfort that actually their market size is some of what these companies are spending on humans today,
Mhm.
and it's going to allow them to free up those humans to do more important or like more complicated tasks.
Mhm.
If synthpop's technology can do the more repetitive rote work that is currently sucking up a vast majority of their time.
Totally. I wonder what's your thought process on like selling to a sophisticated ecosystem like the hospital, and how do you kind of like research a market, or maybe you could if you could share a little bit of the finding while you were researching the company. How does like the process of like selling to call it like a Kaiser works for startups? Like who have to agree with the buy-in and um like also about like the competitive landscape on like maybe some of their competitors are doing X, but they were doing Y that you feel like make them more successful compared to like a lot of people in the same space.
Yeah, I so this company isn't selling to large healthcare systems. I've
Mhm.
talked to companies that are, and I think depending on what the product is, there's and depending on the health system, the
Mhm.
decision making really varies
Mhm.
on the administration versus clinicians and how involved everyone is and what it takes to get a deal signed. But for Synthpop's case, they're selling to these durable medical equipment companies, and
Mhm.
I talking to them was super helpful to understand, what is the value proposition? Why are you taking why'd you take the call? How is it going? Like, who else did you evaluate? Did you talk to any other potential providers? Why did you pick Synthpop? And how are things going? I think that was really informative to understand who else they thought about, why they decided to go with one vendor versus another. And I think a lot of healthcare is distribution at the
Mhm.
end of the day as well. So really figuring out how to get in front of your customer who's super busy in all aspects of healthcare, has a lot of things going on, a lot of things that are broken, a lot of fires to put out. How do you get their attention and get them across the finish line is super important.
How do you evaluate the sales cycle? So, for example, I feel like if you're investing in like the very early stage from like inception slash like I don't know pre-seed level, many times like the people are still working with a design partner, maybe like a hospital or like you mentioned like these um like equipment companies, and I wonder um what's your thought process on like, how much information do you need to get comfortable with like writing a check since many of the um clients doesn't really like commit yet?
Yeah, I think in more complex industries where there aren't many current customers I can talk to,
Mhm,
I rely on a combination of a few things. One, founder market fit, right?
mhm,
The founders' understanding of the market that they're playing in and
mhm,
how deeply they understand it, their connections in the industry, their empathy for their end customer is number one. And then second is talking to potential customers. Like,
mhm,
can I introduce you to potential design partners, and are they interested in taking the call and listening? Do they sign up? Like, what is the result of these net new conversations? It's not a perfect science, but it's a good way to kind of be a fly on the wall of what the
mhm,
customer conversations will be in the future. And then your third question was like knowing what the sales cycles will be. I think that's kind of a bet on knowing, hey, if the depending on what problem they're going after, if their ACVs are long and large enough, like the amount they charge per customer, then it might be okay for their sales cycle to be long and require many touch points because there's a lot of dollars on the other end. But if the dollars are going to be small, then it needs to be more efficient and lower touch and faster. And so trying to understand that willingness to pay actually is super important to me when I'm trying to understand the market and the opportunity.
totally. I wonder when it comes to like since like you talk about like in one of your article, you were talking about like the vertical SaaS market map breakdown. So you have like talk about like business products and services, consumer products, services, materials and resources, and fit like and finance and so on. I wonder like how would you say like I guess like where do you spend most of your energy on? And then can you maybe like give us maybe a quicker deep dive on that sector?
Of all those sectors, which one I've spent the most?
Yeah. I personally, I find very interesting is like the consumer product and services because I think like a lot of people in Silicon Valley are really focused on like infrastructure and B2B investing. But like I feel like um consumer products, there's like the ChatGPT of the world, which is like very famous. But like I wonder what are your observations in this sector that you feel like people are missing?
In consumer.
Yeah, in consumer products and services.
Yeah, I think it's a really good question. I think that there is a lot of dollars to be had,
Mhm.
right? And the in like being able to provide software to like businesses on one end, but consumers on the other, right? So MindBody is a really great example. I'm sure
Mhm.
you used MindBody book
Mhm.
in an exercise class or maybe even appointment at a salon or something like that. The um, there's a lot of opportunity to add value to the business and also to the customer. I think that's how we kind of defined it here is there a consumer on one side of the business? It might not be the person who's paying, but is someone on the other side who's using the product and getting value from it a consumer? And MindBody is a really good example of that. Like it's really valuable to the business because to the exercise studio because they can better manage their schedule and better see demand and kind of be able to plan for it based on when people are signing up. They can take payments versus having to have someone call on the phone or come in person. But the other side of that is also true for consumers, right? Like consumers want to be able to see what the exercise the studio's schedule is and be able to book instead of having to like show up early to secure a spot. Do you remember back in the day you had to like get there early to get a bike and make sure instead of knowing which one your bike is, like you had to go I remember having to like standing there trying to get into the room right away to like pick a bike that I liked or get a spot that I liked. And so it's nice to be able to pick it in advance and then it's not stressful to get there early to pick a spot. It's way easier. I'd rather pay online than have to figure it out later. I'd like to see who the instructor is going to be. And so there's a lot of value to the consumer as well, even if I'm not necessarily the one paying for it directly. And it's making the whoever it is that's using it on the other end, my yoga studio or Pilates studio, my experience is better as a result. And so I'm a happier customer. I'll probably retain longer instead of getting frustrated. And I'll come back more frequently, potentially. I'll stay longer. I'll maybe spend more money. And so it's good for everyone who's involved on all sides.
I wonder, how do you think like AI could like how do you think like the competitive landscape of like AI powered booking system or like any type of like consumer services is like differentiated? I feel like one of the hardest thing is like does like so I've seen people are doing like for example, um let's call it like I don't know, you mentioned MindBuddy, maybe like a AI powered MindBuddy or like what are I guess, like, what would be the different like, how do you evaluate A platform versus B platform? I feel like a lot of times, like, I just seen the same thing over and over again. I don't really know if, like, how if there's, like, any, like, differentiation between, like, one or another.
Yeah. It depends on when you're looking at them. Is it before there's much customer traction
Mhm,
or afterwards? I think before it's a lot of it is on the team and the founder
mhm,
and their point of view. Do they have a unique point of view on the market and what the opportunity is? And then talking to customers, is it something that they're potentially open to? For to your question about the what AI could do here, I think a really good example is a company like MindBody or someone else has all of the data on when are the classes, how many people are signing up, who the instructor is. Do they have reviews on the instructor? Like who are people's favorite instructors? Are there specific times that are more popular, less popular? Like, and if you have all of that data, instead of the studio owner like using heuristics and then pouring through the dashboard to be like, oh, what are the most popular classes? Should I be like, if I only have so many slots and so many instructors, like when should the class timings be? How many classes should I have in a day? Who are my top instructors? What does it mean to be a top instructor? What slots should I give to those instructors? Like
mhm,
AI should be able to make that like really cumbersome process much easier, right? It can
mhm,
look at the data, analyze it, say, hey, these are the windows that are actually like most popular. You should prioritize having classes in these windows. Maybe instead of just having an 8 a.m. slot, you could do 6:30 to 7:30 and 8 to 9 or something, or split it up. And so you can actually get more revenue that way. And this is your instructor. They have the best, like, these are your best instructors. They have the best reviews. Even when you move them around, their classes get filled. Like maybe you should give them the best slots, or maybe, if you move them to another slot, people will come and follow. And so we've seen that happen. And so like this is the optimized schedule that you
mhm,
can that you that we suggest that you do. And then maybe then that's an example of a human in the loop, right? Maybe the AI can suggest the optimized schedule, and then the owner can look at it and say, oh, this makes sense, but I'd make a couple changes here or there, because they have certain context that the machine doesn't have.
I wonder, so like for example, if you are a mind buddy, would you build it in-house? So it sounds like it's kind of like a um GPT API um kind of function to like maybe leveraging your own existing data to like creating some of these like newer solutions leveraging AI. But what's your thought process on like, if a startup would be able to sell to the mind buddy of the world? And um how do you think about like if a company would just build this in-house versus like they are um they have to kind of like um they are open to like startups to coming in to help them giving them a solution.
Yeah, it's really hard, I think,
Mhm.
to know, because the end customer themselves often doesn't know, right? Like, I think there are many times where, and I've gotten it wrong many times, where you talk to customers and they're like, "We would never build this in-house. I mean, we would never outsource this. We're gonna build it in-house always." And then 6 months, a year later, turns out it's really hard, or it requires a lot of resources, and there's so many other competing resources in a company, and so it's easier, and in that situation, it actually just makes sense to use a vendor to solve something. And then in other situations, it is so key um, that they won't use the vendor, and so it's a little bit of an art and a science of making a bet and kind of reading between the lines and seeing what's developing a point of view on what's going to happen. I think I'm often wrong. VCs are often wrong. But trying to, it's an art, and trying to just develop a point of view on whether the tide will turn and the dominoes will fall in a short enough time frame that it'll still be valuable for the startup, right? Because if timing is also so huge for startups, I think that's something that isn't talked about as frequently as I would have thought it would be. But I think, there are a lot of companies that failed doing things that today there are very large companies doing those things, and it was just because they were too early to the market and timing was off. And you know,
Mhm.
they don't have infinite dollars to
Mhm.
stay alive and hibernate and wait till the market is ready for that product. So timing is really important too. And so why now is the question that we often ask. Is,
Um,
this has been a problem for a long time. Why is this the time that customers are going to be open to it? Or why is this the time that a startup is going to succeed here?
since like, you one of your focus was like fintech, and I wonder like what's your thought process on if a startup is trying to sell to the hedge funds of the world or like somewhere that's like with you can technically sell a very high ticket item, but there's like, five clients in the world, not five clients, but like I think you got what I mean, like small set of like clients that are you can sell like a really high ticket item to.
Yeah, there's a lot of hedge funds in the world. I'm
Yeah,
shocked
yeah,
at
yeah.
how many there are. I think that um, the selling to financial services, I think, is actually really interesting.
Mhm.
I think the bar is really high for software, what people are willing to pay for, and software that will actually add value, because so much of someone's workflow, it's so complex, and there's so much human judgment that's applied to it. And so having that context, if the company can have context on the way that it you know very smart, very experienced analyst would kind of interpret. There's a lot of interpretation, I think, and so that they can make certain processes faster because they can add a layer of interpretation. I think people are willing to pay a lot of money for that. And even in just kind of data, just copy and pasting a lot of data, there's some interpretation, and so that's been what's held certain companies back from being able to create products that actually add enough value that someone's willing to pay the money. But I think there's a lot of opportunity to do that, and as people do that, there'll be large dollars on the other side. To your point.
How do you understand like who you're selling to? So like for example, let's say I feel like um a lot of times like when I see these like, there's companies that are selling database for to like high net worth individual like family offices or a hedge fund or something. Um like but I feel like the product they're selling are um either like a technology or like I guess like it's really hard to understand the pain point of a subset of customer. Um on the other hand, like a startup maybe already pivot into like a different product throughout the sales cycle. How do you advise founders to like either pivot or keep on selling to the same subsector founder, like just like customers?
Um, Tell me if I'm answering your question, but it's hard for me to know, right? The founder is the
Mhm,
closest
mhm,
to their customer and their product, and uh, I think my job is to ask questions to help founders think through what the right next step is for their company. Um, but I think the best founders are opinionated, but also listen to their customers and their potential customers and keep iterating pretty rapidly on their product and
Hi
their
everyone, I'm
go-to-market.
Medha Agarwal, a partner
oh
in
my god, I'm sorry, I click on the wrong thing on your
Oh, okay. I was just saying they listen to their customers and their potential customers and iterate really quickly on product and go to market and keep iterating, making small tweaks, sometimes large tweaks to the product, to their process, and as they get feedback and keep iterating until they start really feeling that pull. Like when you have product market fit as a company, you feel it, you know it. It doesn't feel like pushing a rock up
Mhm.
a boulder up the hill. You feel like you're getting pulled into customer conversations, and people are really leaning in, buying your product, and so it's never a question. If you're questioning whether you have product market fit or not, you probably don't have it. But the best founders keep iterating and tweaking, trying to get closer and closer to that feeling.
I wonder in terms of like, so I was like just looking at your like past articles, like I have it on the side, but I wonder when it comes to um, like I guess like when it comes to like evaluating companies. Oh, okay. So I want to dive into like a little bit more about like the things that you mentioned at the very beginning about like the maybe the NIL will be like a good example. Um, I wonder like for the sector of like college athletes, I feel like seems like a really new sector. Can you share a little bit more about like your findings in that space and how does like the money flow in the space? And since I feel like that's very new and yeah.
Yeah, um, it's evolving. People are still figuring out how the money's
Mhm,
gonna flow, and I think that's what makes it exciting. I think my so I played a sport in college.
mhm,
Um, I was a rower in a school that had Division 1 rowing, and so
mhm,
I saw and felt this pain point of, I had some really amazing teammates that could have coached or had been a sponsor and a brand ambassador, but weren't able to do that. They could have added a lot of value in different ways, but they couldn't monetize in any way. And now the kind of doors have been flung open of
mhm,
college athletes being able to do that, and athletes on one side are trying to figure out what's going on and how to navigate this world. The schools and universities are trying to figure out what is going on and how to navigate this and what is okay, what's not okay, what's their role. And then the brands or boosters or all the people that want to spend money and pay the athletes or the school or be involved are also trying to figure out what's acceptable, what's not acceptable, what is actually an effective way for me to, as a brand, spend money. Who should I be and which athletes are the right athletes? How do I even navigate this world? And so it feels really primed for technology, right? If we believe technology is going to add transparency, it's going to add efficiency. Like this world feels primed for that. There's none of that is there today.
mhm,
It's really inefficient. It's not transparent. Athletes are always asking, "Hey, is this a fair deal? How much should I charge? Should I be getting paid for this at all? Like, what? How do I even interpret what's being offered to me?" And how do I even go about? I want to make money as a college athlete. How
mhm.
do I go do that? I don't know how to go do that. And so it feels like a really great opportunity for technology to add transparency, to make things more efficient, And that's kind of the high level core thesis that I have, is that it feels really primed for technology to kind of come in, add value, and make a difference in this new emerging market.
I wonder how, like, are they some is this similar to like a content creator, like the creator economy? So for example, if like there will be platforms that are kind of like publicizing people's salary or like you can book a athletes on I guess like athleteintro.com or something. So how does the so right now is that just them getting brand deals or like how does the kind of money flow in the ecosystem? And
Yeah.
how do you yeah,
Sorry, go ahead.
sorry, I was asking, like, is this a billion-dollar market? I'm sure it is, but
It depends. I think it's unknown today, and it
Mhm,
depends on what the market, like how we're cutting the market.
mhm,
There are billions of dollars, lots of market research reports that say there's going to be many billions of dollars that are spent,
mhm,
on athletes to pay them to do various things, so sponsorships, coaching, um, brand deals, whatever it is. But how that money, like a technology layer on, is not going to capture all those dollars, right? Because hopefully most of those dollars go to the athletes
mhm.
themselves. And so it's still very unclear in early days what the market size for a technology could be. um, I think there's a lot of similarities between the creator market and the world of NIL, but I think it's
Mhm,
also it's different in many ways. Most of the creator
mhm,
market opportunities are those kind of sponsored posts,
mhm,
like product placement type deals. I think for athletes, that's one uh, like avenue to make money, and to date, that's been most of the way that people have made money. But I think there's other ways, right? Like athletes in their local ecosystem are so influential. And so in-person events, coaching is, we talked about coaching, right? Coaching younger athletes or adults, or just teaching people their craft, doing talks or speeches or meet and greets. I think there's a lot of different things that athletes in their local market can do. That's um, at least in my opinion, it seems like there's the menu of ways that they can monetize is both online and offline, and more varied than a more traditional kind of influencer, like a Instagram or TikTok influencer, for example.
totally. How do you quickly understand, like, the players in the ecosystem that matters? Like, and how do you kind of quickly build up the network in this ecosystem? Because it sounds like it's a fairly new ecosystem, and I guess, like, also, like, how do you define like where to spend your time or where not to since I feel like defining a new category is like very um it's a little bit risky so
Yeah, I'm still learning, and so the way I've been meeting people is reaching out to some people in my network, all of whom are super helpful and and
Mhm,
suggest other people for me to meet and make intros, and the concentric circles have gone out that way. And I also have just put the word out. I tell people that I talk to that are curious about where I'm spending time, like you, hey, I'm super interested in this world. I think there's going to be a big company built here. If you know people who want to talk about it or are interested or are iterating in this field, like send them my way. I would love to talk to them. And I think people are pretty generous with those intros and outreach. And it's allowed me to talk to everyone from current college athletes to former college athletes to professional athletes to people in universities to agents to all sorts of interesting people who have different points of view on where this market's going to go. And they're just really interesting conversations, if nothing else.
do you have a thesis or do you have like like maybe a set of company that you're having your eye on?
I think it's still really early. And so I think there's going to be, I think there are a bunch of interesting companies in the space, but I think a lot more are going to be created as well. And I think the ones that I'm most interested in are the ones that are going to, I think there's a really interesting opportunity to create really, to create real like value for the athletes, right? Like for many college athletes, like making $500 or $5,000 over their college career is not a small amount of money, and it'll really enable them to either pay for their books or to have some pocket money or whatever it is that's important to them. That'll be really meaningful. And so companies that can drive some meaningful difference or change in college athletes' lives, whether it's helping them connect better to existing opportunities, or actually maybe like even creating new opportunities that otherwise wouldn't have existed because it was too inefficient in either the discovery process or the creation process to do that, to connect with athletes, to execute those deals. If you can create efficiency so that there's more opportunities and larger opportunities, I think that's really interesting. And so that's a thread that I've been pulling.
How do you kind of like arrive at this specific topic? Because I think it's still like pretty new and like, well, everyone else still focusing on like SaaS. And but like how do you kind of like pick a niche that you feel like you're having a great like outlook on?
It's something that's near and dear to my heart. I played a sport in college. It's something that I thought about a lot, and so it's something that I've been watching. So in 2021 was the Supreme Court ruling that kind of opened the floodgates to NIL making it legal to do that, and or striking down the rule that made it not possible for athletes to monetize their name, image, likeness. So I've just been following it over the years. When 2021, when that Supreme Court ruling happened, I've been watching kind of from the sidelines what's going on, and it feels like people are starting to get their feet under them, and the market is starting to evolve. And like we talked about, timing is so important. 2021 felt too early, or 22 felt too early, but it feels like now things are starting to move, and it might be the right time now to build a large business.
I wonder, so like how do you even like you mentioned like a great thing is about like timing and I wonder when you're so I guess like when it comes to like study that sub market, like I'm sure like you have some observations earlier and like you mentioned about like there's government rule changes in the space and then what are like call it like some other category of things that you would look at? Like one things I would look at is like where the talents are flowing. So, but nowadays, like because of like AI is hot, so I feel like the major amount of talent are still going to that direction. How do you kind of like figure out if something is like, actually are gonna attract the most amount of like major amount of talents going into the direction or like that's like not like the best benchmark to look at?
Um, it's interesting. I pay attention to where talent is going in terms of, okay, these are categories to watch, because if more people are going into the category, then they'll probably spin out and
Mhm.
start more companies in the space. And that's interesting to me. I think the NIL stuff, I think there are enough people who have an appreciation for sports and college sports in particular, either because they played it, because they loved watching games or grew up watching games, or just generally are interested in sports and think it's intellectually interesting, that I think that there will be enough really smart people that go after this category. I'm not worried about um, a company to this ability to hire people, especially if they're doing well.
Totally. Okay, I wanna be mindful of the time, so we have a quick fire round for you. First question is like, what's your favorite book?
I This is such a hard question because there are so many great books, but the first one that comes to mind is The Everything Store.
Oh yeah, the Jeff Bezos, like it's the
The story
Amazon
of
book. Yeah,
Amazon.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I think mostly because I thought it was very inspiring, and as such an avid user of Amazon, I actually didn't know what the story was behind the company, and
Mhm.
so it was just a really fun, inspiring read.
For sure. I feel like the leadership principles are just amazing. Um, who would you invite to your dinner party?
Uh, One person.
It's your party.
Okay. I One person I would invite would be my grandfather. I Both of them have passed away, but one of them I never had the opportunity to meet. And so if we're really thinking about it's my dinner party, I can invite anybody. I think it would be amazing to meet him.
Who made the biggest impact in your career?
That is a great question. The first person that comes to mind is someone who convinced me to go into business. Like I didn't really know what business was, which sounds really maybe really dumb and to people who are in the business world. But I like in college, I think was evaluating a bunch of different industries and lost and confused and wasn't really sure what to do. And this person was going to go work in consulting at Bain, and I was like, wow, I admire this person, and that sounds really interesting, and I want to go do that. And so I don't know how much thought there was in it, but I kind of went down that path, and that's where eventually, many steps later, got me to where I am today.
Amazing. What do you have a person in venture, that's, like, kind of you try to model yourself after?
Oh, I mean, there's so many people that are doing such incredible things in venture, so that's too hard of a question for me to answer. I feel like there's so many people that I see them doing really amazing, interesting things that I want to kind of replicate in my own practice.
Where can we find you outside of work?
Uh, Either in an exercise class or chasing after one of my kids.
That sounds like an exercise too, but, well, thank you so much for coming on the show, my dad.
Thank you for having me. This was so fun and your super thoughtful questions. I'm honored that you took the time to look me up and read up on some of the things I've done before.
Everyone should also subscribe to your newsletter. We should put them down below. It's called Making Sense. It's like it's sense as like the money sense.
Yes.
Okay, let me quickly end stream.